Today I'm going to use Revit to create a custom piece of furniture. It's an L-shaped wardrobe. It has 4 shelves. It's got 2 drawers and a hanging rail. And once I've created that in Revit as a model, I'll then show you how to apply materials to the surface. This one has a timber finish and metal drawer handles and a metal hanging rail. The first thing that we need to do to create a piece of furniture is to open a file in Revit. This is the first screen that you will see when you go into Revit. And what you can see are 2 sections here. There's the project section. What we want to do is to create a new file under families. To do that, you click on New, and then you scroll down this list here until you get to Metric Furniture. Click on that with your left mouse and click Open, and that will open that file. That's basically a template to create your furniture in. If you already had a project open, you won't see this screen here, so you won't have access to this family section. So what you can do is click on the Revit symbol up here, click on New and Family. This is exactly the same menu that we had before. Select Metric Furniture and click Open. So there are 2 ways to open a new file. You can either do it from the first screen and select it from here, or you can select it from the Revit symbol there. This is basically, as I said before, template. It's got these dotted lines here intersecting each other, and basically you use this to create your furniture around. This is used for creating parametric furniture, and you can make it so that it is an equal distance on either side from any of these dotted lines. I'm going to next show you how to actually make the furniture. For a piece of furniture with many components, such as this wardrobe, before you begin, you want to make sure that you've got all the dimensions written down on a piece of paper and that you've worked out the different segments of your piece of furniture that you're going to make in Revit. I'll be using a systematic workflow to create each of the components of the wardrobe in Revit. I'll be using these same 6 steps for each component. The first part of the wardrobe that we're going to create is the base, and the first step is to draw the shape. The base will be shaped as follows on this diagram here. Back in Revit, we're now going to draw the shape of the base. You need to go to the Create tab. You need to click on Extrusion. As I showed you before, all the drawing tools are here. So let's draw the shape of the base. It's an L shape, and I'm going to draw it around these dotted lines. So here we go. Revit very kindly helps you to draw straight lines and shows you where to stop drawing so that it links up with the last line that you created. Okay. So now that we've drawn the shape, I'll press Escape on my keyboard just to get out of the drawing tool. I'll then put dimensions around this object. So for dimensions, you need to go to Measure and use the Align Dimension tool. So to do these dimensions, what we actually want to do is have these 2 lines here an equal distance from this dotted line, and these 2 lines here need to be an equal distance from this dotted line. The rest will not be an equal distance. So we'll dimension the ones that are an equal distance first. To do that, you click on the bottom line, click on the dotted line in the middle, then click on the top line. Pull your mouse out to the left. You can see that there's an EQ written there. You need to click on that, and now you can see it's telling you that each of these, this bottom line here and this top line here, are an equal distance from that dotted line. We'll do the same for this line here. We'll make both of these an equal distance from this dotted line. So click on the left line, click on the middle dotted line, click on the right line, pull your mouse downwards and click, and we get that little EQ there, and it's saying it's not equal. I'll click on it, and now it is equal. Now we'll create the other dimensions, and we're not going to click on the middle dotted line this time because we don't want them to be equidistant from the dotted line. So click on one side, click on the other, and pull your mouse up. So you can just see here there's a value, and there's no EQ. Click on the top and bottom and pull your mouse out to the right. So now you can see every side of the shape has a dimension, except for these two here, which are equidistant from the dotted line. We won't need to apply parameters to these two lines here because they will be determined, those lengths will be determined by, and widths, by these here, by applying parameters to each of these figures. Okay, so we've now created drawn the shape, which is step 1. We've applied dimensions to each side of the shape, which is step 2 of the workflow. Now for step 3, which is to create parameters for each for this shape. So to do that, we go up to the top here, click on in Properties, click on this button here, which is Family Types, and we will now add parameters. So to do that, we click on the Add button and type in your parameter name. So the first one I'm going to create, and this is all as per the measurements I showed you before. So base outer width, and make sure that group parameter under is dimensions, which it usually is as a default anyway, but just double check. Click OK. Okay, so there we go. There's our first parameter. It doesn't have a value yet. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. We'll add the next parameter. So base outer length. So this is the length for the long side of the shape. Click OK. Add another one. We want base inner length. And finally, we will add base inner width. And click OK. Now you can see, as I said before, there are no values. We will now add values. It's very simple. Click on the zeros for one line. The value of base outer width is 850 millimeters. So type in 850. Outer length is 1259 millimeters. And I'll just keep adding these values. Okay. Okay, so we've added values for each of those. We want them to be locked. So click on the checkbox under the lock column and then click OK. At the moment, the parameters have not been applied to the dimensions here. So you can see none of the values that I just entered are on any side of this shape. Just a few notes on the way that we've set up this shape around these dotted lines and making them equal distance. This is actually the foundation of a parametric object. So if you want your objects to be parametric, this is how you begin to create them. So what we need to do next is to apply parameters to each of the dimensions that we've created. We won't be applying parameters to the dimensions that are equidistant from the dotted lines, just the ones that have the values. So to start with, you can see that attached to my mouse here, it's still the Align Dimensions tool is still activated. So to get out of that, I need to press Escape a few times on my keyboard. There we go. Okay, so To apply a parameter to each of the dimensions, click on a dimension. So for example, I'll start with this one down here, base inner width, and you'll see now that I've clicked on it, it's turned blue. And you'll also see at the top here, this label drop-down box has appeared. Click on the drop-down arrow, and then you can see all the parameters that we've created. We want to apply base inner width to this particular measurement, which is 500 millimeters. And you can see straight away that has now applied to that dimension. We'll come across to here, base inner length. Base inner length, 959. Excellent. You can now see that we have base inner width, base inner length applied to our dimensions. Now, I'll finish off the last two, which is base outer width of 850 and base outer length of 1259. Now you can see that even though I've applied different parameters of different lengths and widths to each of these sides, the sides that I've asked to remain equidistant from the dotted line have still remained equidistant from the dotted line. So that half there is equal to that half there, and no matter what I've done to the other measurements, and that's what we want. Step 5 of my workflow is to accept the modifications that we've made to this shape after we've applied the parameters. So to do that, I'm just going to modify here, and you can see under mode there's a big green tick and a cross. We want to click on the big green tick to finish edit mode. That's really important to do, otherwise you'll have trouble working on your object in the elevation section, which is what we're going to do next. So click on the big green finish edit mode tick, and you can see now that we've got handles here on the edge of the object, and you can actually use these to drag the lines out and change the shape and dimension. I wouldn't recommend doing that now because we've already applied parameters and we want the measurements to stay as they are. So the next thing we need to do is to position the element, which we won't need to do for the base because that's going to be positioned on the bottom of everything, so that's fine, and to apply a height parameter to the shape. We haven't actually dimensioned the height yet or created a parameter for that, so I'll do that next. When you are creating the length, width and depth parameters, you could create the height parameter there, but you won't apply it until we get to this next step that I'm about to show you. So now we need to switch to the front view. So the front view here, double click on that, that's under elevations, front. And now you can actually see a height to our shape that we've created. Revit will automatically put a thickness or a height to the object when you create them, but we need to actually specify. So it's actually got here depth 250, so that's what it's applied to our object. So the once again, as with the length and the width, we need to put a dimension onto the object for the height. To do that, now that we are in front view, we go back up to the measure section up here, click on align dimensions, and we have this dimension tool again. Now for the height, we want to click on the bottom line and then the top line, and then take the mouse out to the right. Okay, so we can see here that it's 250. As I showed you before, that's the automatic depth that it's given to our object. We don't want the base to be 250 millimeters high. We want it to be 100 millimeters high. So to change that, we first need to create a parameter for the height. And we do this in the same way that we did for the length and the width. So go up to the properties section here, click on the family types button, and we've got base widths and lengths. We want to add, click on the add button, and we want to type in base height. And again, just check group parameter under dimensions and click OK. Okay, we want the height to be 100 millimeters. So in the value column here, click on the height and type in 100. Okay, we just click on the OK button. That has not yet applied to our dimension. So to apply that height to the dimension, we click on the dimension here, and we then click on the label drop-down box and select height. And you can see now that the height has changed to 100 millimeters. Now something, if you're watching closely, that you might pick up on that I forgot to do was to lock the dimension. So I forgot to lock it in the properties, but I can just lock it here. See how there's a little lock icon there? I can click on that. And now that dimension and parameter is, or I should say the parameter is locked. You want to lock your parameters because that means that when you have finished creating the object as a whole, you will then be able to change lengths and widths, and all the lengths and the widths associated with the ones that you're changing will move together. So if you wanted to make the entire object narrower, then you could change one width and all of the widths will become narrower in proportion to that width that you've changed. Okay, you can now view the object in 3D just for fun, and see what it looks like. So to do that, we're in the front view. We want to go to 3D. You can just click on this little house icon up the top here. Wow, so we've got the object here in 3D and you can rotate it around, but we're having trouble seeing it because what's actually happened is that it's put the height parameter on top of the object. So the label is sitting on top of the object and we can't see it. Now that can easily be changed. If it's done that to you, we go up to the top here to view and visibility graphics. And that's appeared on my other screen. There we go, visibility graphics. Now you can see here it's got 3 tabs at the top. We want the middle tab, annotation categories. And you can see here visibility, dimensions is ticked. We don't want to see those dimensions in the way of our 3D object. So if I untick that and click apply, you'll see now there's no dimension in front of your object. You can click OK. So now you can much more easily rotate it around and look at the object in all different views. You've now used the main steps and processes required to create any shape in Revit. And for the rest of the components of the wardrobe, we'll go through those same steps again. We're actually going to create the floor next. So you can see here the floor is this section here, and it actually goes underneath the drawers. The floor sits on top of the base, and the walls will be around the edge of the floor that will actually sit on the base. We'll go through the same workflow process as we did before, which is in the reference level. We'll draw the shape using the extrusion drawing tools. We'll create dimensions for the shape using the measure tool, which is the align dimensions tool. We'll set up parameters for length, width and height in the Family Types Properties box. We'll apply these parameters to the dimensions that we created for the shape using the Label drop-down menu. And we'll then accept the modifications that we've made to the shape using the Finish Edit tick. And we'll then switch to the front elevation to position the floor and apply a height parameter to it. The floor measurements are, as you can see here, we have a floor outer width 1 and 2, floor outer length, floor inner width, and floor inner length 1 and 2. To create the floor, we need to go, we're currently in the front view in elevation, we need to go back to floor plans ref level so that we can look down from above. Double click on ref level. You can see now you're looking down at the base. Again, to draw the floor, we go back to create and we click on the extrusion button, and now we can draw the floor. This time I'm going to draw it with a rectangle, and I'm going to show you how to modify a rectangle to make it into a different shape. Well, in this case the L shape. So I'm clicking on the corner here and you can see our floor will be something like this. So I'll just click there. So I'm double clicking on escape on the keyboard. There we go. Now to make the L shape, I can select the line tool and then I just draw my lines where I want them to be to create that L. Okay, escape again on the keyboard. Now I can easily modify this rectangle just by clicking on this line here, and see this little circle here. You can hold down your mouse key, your left mouse key, and drag it upwards, and there we go. And do the same with this one here. And there we go, we've modified a rectangle to be that L shape that we wanted. Again, we now need to create dimensions for the floor. We go into the measure area, click on the aligned dimension tool, and we just go around the shape. Oops. And drag the mouse up for that one and create all our dimensions. As we did before, that's picked up the bottom line there. Just be careful about that. I just pressed Ctrl Z to undo it. So make sure that you get the right line. So see how that's highlighted in blue? I can click on that now, that's correct. And just keep going around. That's again picked up the bottom. I don't want that. Escape. And pull it out. And down. And the last one. This time we're not escaped again to get out of that tool. We're not creating these lines, this line here and that line there, an equal distance from the dotted line here. The floor won't be an equal distance. It will sit on top of the base, but it'll be a bit offline or out of line. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to create parameters. And again, we go to the Family Types button and we simply click on the Add button here and we type in the name that we want. Again, start with what the object is and then put the dimension that it is, which in this case it's width, last. And click OK, and keep doing this for all the other parameters that you want to create for the floor. Now just to make sure that when I apply the parameters they don't change the shape in an odd way, I'm just going to move this shape a bit so that it sits where it needs to sit before I apply the parameters. So to do that, I need to move this wall in by 50 mil and this wall in by 50 mil, and then this needs to sit on top of the base here, and that needs to sit on top of the base there. So I just click on the line that I want to move, and I click on the move tool up in the top menu. Then I can select the line really anywhere, and hasn't grabbed onto it. Okay, I'm holding down my left mouse key and pulling it down. Now it says 100, I only want to move it by 50, so I just type in 50 and click to accept. Okay, just looking at the measurements I've got here with the dimensions, they're not quite adding up. This side here is 350, this side here should also be 350 because we want the depth on this side to be the same as the depth on this side. We want the shelves here to be as deep as shelves here and the wardrobe. Having a look at what I've done, I've actually miscalculated this length here on the base. So if you make a mistake, it's very easy to fix that up. And I've left this in because I wanted to show you what to do. We just go back up to our parameters up here, and we can see here that that is base inner length, and it's 959. It should be 909. So if I change that to 909, click apply, and you can see that the whole thing shifted upwards. And it's shifted upwards because it's still going to remain equidistant from the dotted line. So I didn't need to actually go out of this section, and I just had to fix the parameter. That was very easy. So now this line here should actually be 50 millimeters down. So to move that, I'll just press escape, click on that line there and the move tool, and get that triangle up and just move it downwards by 50. Okay, that's much better. Now we will apply parameters, and I'm just going to actually adjust the value for that parameter because having put in the dimensions on this side, I can actually see that I had 909 as the length there. I only want it to be 859. So in my parameters here, mistakes are fantastic because you learn from them. We've got floor inner length 909. I want that to be 859. And I'm just matching it up because you don't necessarily need to do this, but because we're working with an odd shape, if you click on it, if you apply a parameter, it can twist around if it's depending on where the shape is located. So we just want the parameters to apply really well. So to apply the parameters, again, you start from one dimension up here, and again click on it and label comes up here, and we click on the drop down and we select that's floor outer width 850, and I just keep going around and apply the parameters. Floor outer length is that one. Now I need to change that parameter because I actually want it to be 350, and I typed in 300. So again, you just go up to here, family types, and that was floor inner length 2. So I go here and I want that to be 350. And you can click apply and it'll straight away fix it up there. Okay, our floor's looking really good. As I said before, it's really important to click on the Finish Edit Mode green tick before you apply the height. Now we can apply the height. We go into Elevations and we click on Front View, double click. Now you can see the floor is sitting, the bottom of it is sitting underneath the base. We don't want that. So now that we're in the front view, we can actually use these handles to click on it and drag the mouse up to drag the floor to where we want it to sit. So I'm happy now that I've positioned that floor where I want it to be, which is on top of the base. The floor doesn't sit underneath the base. Now, we want the height parameter to be applied to the floor here. So again, we put a dimension on that floor up here in the Align Dimensions tool. And we click on the bottom of the floor and we click on the top of the floor and we can bring that out there. Now press escape twice on my keyboard, click on that dimension, and I already created the floor height in parameters. So I just click on the label drop down and we just find floor height. Here it is, 25 millimeters. Excellent. Now we have a floor sitting on top of a base, and that's exactly what we want. We'll now create a 50 mil thick wall around the edge of the floor all the way around. On this side and this side it will sit on the base. On this side it will overhang by 50 mil. You can also see that there's an inner wall here. We'll create that once we're finished with this outer wall here. As you can see, if it lets me scroll down, we have the wall measurements here. We have wall width 1, and I'm just following the same format with measurements. Wall inner length here 1, just wall inner length. Wall width 2, wall thickness of 50 millimeters, and wall outer length. And you can see the wall, which is outlined in green, sits around the floor, but it only goes to here, it doesn't go inside here. Again, we'll follow the same workflow process. We will use reference level to draw the shape using the extrusion drawing tools. We'll create dimensions for the shape. We'll set up the parameters for length, width and height. We'll apply the parameters and accept those modifications. We'll then position the element, which is the walls, and apply the height parameter. So back in Revit, we'll go back to floor plans reference level and create extrusion. This time I'm using the rectangle tool to create the walls, and it's pretty much just picking an endpoint. And there's 1 and 2. Doesn't like what I've done there. And this one here, 3. I only want that to go out by 50, so I'm going to let me do that. That's okay. Okay. Now, let's just go in a bit closer, and what I want to do now is to just make this a bit smaller. Okay, we don't want that to be 100, we only want that to be 50. So click on it and type in 50, there we go, excellent. This one is already 50. This one's also 50 because it's sitting on the base. This one here is 100, we want that to be 50. Fantastic. Okay, you'll notice with the walls, there's actually these inner lines here. We want the wall to be all one piece, we don't want these lines here. So what we're going to do is delete them. And I'm just going to show you how to do that. I'll just zoom in. Okay, so this one here, click on that line that we want to move, and we click on that circle again, and we just drag the mouse down. So now that line is only as long as to that wall, there's a little piece left over here, we just click on that and press delete on your keyboard. There we go. This one, we do the same, drag it down, and delete, and the same for the other one. And delete. Okay, there's our walls. We'll now dimension the walls. And as before, we go up to the measure area here, and align dimension, and we simply go around and dimension the walls. So I want, okay, on, on, that one. I'm going to go up to family types, and I'm now going to create parameters by clicking add, typing in the name, clicking OK, and once I've added all the parameters, I will then add the values for those parameters. I'm just going to do that quickly. You've seen me do it already to save time. Okay, so I've added in some wall parameters here. I've got 2 widths, 2 lengths, a thickness and a height. And again, I need to check a lock box here and click OK. Now I will apply the parameters to each of these dimensions. Okay, so click on the first length dimension there, label, and I'm just going to quickly do it again. Okay, that's all width 1. Okay, so we're happy with that, and we click Finish Edit mode. And now we go to our front view, and you can see here again the base of the wall, or the bottom of the wall, is under the base. We want that to sit on the base. So we grab the handlebar and drag the mouse upwards so that it sits on the base. Now we need to dimension the height of the wall again, so align dimension. Click on the bottom of the wall, click on the top of the wall, and just drag this out somewhere where you can see it. And escape on your keyboard. And just click on the dimension. And we'll give it the wall height. And there we go. There's the wall height. Okay. We now need to create the inner wall. So the dividing wall is this part here, and it goes all the way from, it sits on the floor, and it goes all the way up to the ceiling. And just looking at the measurements of the dividing wall, it has a thickness of 25 millimeters, and it sits 525 millimeters from this edge wall here. Again, we'll go through the same workflow process as before. Draw the shape, create the dimensions, set up the parameters, apply the parameters, accept the modifications, position the wall, and apply the height. Back in Revit, I'm not going to take you through creating a dividing wall step by step, as it's exactly the same process as creating the walls, except we're only creating one small wall with the rectangle drawing tool. And so I'm just going to run through this quickly without commentary. I'm just holding down the control key to select each of the sides so that I can move the entire object. I am going to create a dimension as a distance from the wall over here, just in case you ever wanted to move the dividing wall. And here I don't want dividing wall thickness, I actually want dividing wall distance from wall edge. So I'm going to modify that. Now this needs to sit on top of the floor, not the base. Dimension the floor. And I want the dividing wall height. And you can see it's the same height as the outer walls. Now we need to create 4 shelves. They sit above the floor and they're spaced 455 millimeters apart. Again, we'll follow the same workflow process. And you can see this is the outline of the shelves here. You can see that it follows the inside of the outer walls and the dividing walls going around. This time we'll actually be creating 1 shelf, and then we'll be making 3 copies of that shelf and positioning it in the front elevation. So I'm just going through this super fast. I've traced around the inner side of the walls to create the shelf shape using the line tool. Again, that's in the Create tab and Extrusions. Now I'm going to use the Align Dimensions tool to make the dimensions. Here are my dimensions. I'm now going to go into the Family Types area to create parameters. Here are my shelf parameters, and I've already added values for each of those, and I'm just going to lock them. I haven't locked my dividing wall parameters. There we go. Again, I'll apply the parameters. So you can see here are the dimensions and the parameters applied to the dimensions that we created. We don't need the parameters for through here, that's fine. So now we'll go to the front elevation to position the shelf, and then we'll make 3 copies of the shelf and space them all 455 millimeters apart. So this time the shelf will actually sit 455 millimeters above the floor. So what we want to do when we position the shelf is not to have it sitting on the floor, but to move it up. So I'm just going to take this handle up here, and we also need to create another parameter that provides the spacing between the shelves. So if I go into family types again and add and shelf spacing, okay, now we want that to be 455 millimeters, and okay, lock it. Okay, now first of all I'm going to dimension the shelf height as normal. Okay. Now just click on the dimension, and it is 25. So now that we've created the shelf height, we need to dimension the space between the shelves. So to do that, we again go to the Align Dimension tool, click on the bottom of the shelf, click on the floor, take this out here, if it goes, and now I apply shelf spacing to create it before to that. Now you can see that the shelf now is 455 millimeters from the floor. Now what we want to do is to make 3 more copies of this shelf, and they'll all be spaced at that 455 millimeters apart. So click on the shelf to select it, and up here next to rotate is the copy tool. Now because I want 3 copies, I'm going to click in multiple, and then I'm going to click on a corner of the shelf and copy it out. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. We now have 3 copies of the shelf. I've just moved some of the height dimensions out of the way. We'll actually start with the last shelf out here. So click on that. Click on one of the handles, and you can move it upwards. There we go, top handle there. So I've just dragged it upwards. I want to now move it. So click on the move tool, click on the corner of the shelf, and if it lets me select it, that would be great. There we go, I've moved it straight across, and now the blue line's highlighted, it's moved it to there. And we'll go through and do the same for the other shelves as well. So click on it. If you can just get the top handle, there we go, and just move it upwards. And then click move, select the corner, and drag it across till it highlights them here, blue. And the last one. The trick is to grab that top handlebar, not the middle one, and click on move and corner here. There we go. Now, to do the spacing, we simply dimension the gaps between each of these shelves, as we did for the first shelf. I'm just going to pull that out to here. do another one up here. Can be a bit fiddly sometimes. There we go. Okay, now we'll click on the first dimension and go up to label, and we just select the parameter for shelf spacing. Now we'll do it for the second one. And the third. Okay, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves, and they're all spaced 455 millimeters apart. So the next step is to create these two drawers. They're vertically stacked, one on top of the other, and they have a depth, they're 250 millimeters high, and they require handles. This is my workflow. It's the same again as it has been before. Draw the shape, create the dimensions, set up the parameters. I'm using these parameters here, and apply the parameters to the dimensions. So you can see down here we've got my measurements here, and you can see that I've got some parameters for the drawer handles and the spacing from the edge of the drawer and from the base. And once you've done that, we set the modifications and finish edit mode, and then we switch to front elevation and apply the height parameter to the shape, position the element with the move tool, which is the draw. So once we've positioned the first draw, then we make a copy of it, and we then move that so that it's sitting directly above the first draw. So you make one draw, make a copy of it, and then move it to sit on top of the first draw. Now I'm quickly going to create the drawer in reference level. Then I'll talk you through making a copy of the drawer and correctly positioning it in the front elevation view. So I've used the Create Extrusion tools to make a drawer and a drawer handle. I just basically use the rectangle tools, and I've put the parameters on the dimensions of the drawer and the drawer handle. What I wanted to show you, seeing as we've done the extrusion so many times now, is how to copy this drawer and stack it vertically. So it's very similar to how we copied the shelves. Select the drawer by clicking on it, hold down the Control key and select the drawer handle. Now we've selected both pieces, we need to go up to copy. This time we don't want to select multiple copies, we just want to do one copy, so uncheck that box. Click in the corner of the drawer and copy it outwards. Now we've got one copy of the drawer, we need to move it up and move it back in. So to move it up, we click on the copy. So I'm going to take it with it. There we go. Just move the mouse up, holding down the mouse key till we think it's about on top of that other drawer. It's pretty close. Now we select, hold down the Control key and just make sure that you select the handle as well. This time we will use the Move tool. Click in the corner and slide the mouse across until we get to the back. Now there's a little bit of a gap there. We want to move it back down. So click on the drawer there and simply move it down, and now we have a copy of this drawer here and it's stacked vertically above. Okay, the next component is the hanging rail, and this is the second last thing. We've got the ceiling after this, so we're almost done. So we'll be using the circle to create that, and we'll also be using the rotate tool to rotate it around and extend it out. Back in the reference level under floor plans, we're going to create the rail, and it's going to extend from this dividing wall here down to this outer wall here. So this time when we go to create extrusion, we don't want the line tool or the rectangle tool, we want the circle tool. Pick the midpoint on the wall and just draw your circle. Now I only want a small circle because it is a hanging rail, so we don't want a rail with an 80 millimeter diameter. Take it down to 15. Now we want to rotate the circle. To do that, we need to go into the front elevation. You can see it's down here. Oh, I've forgotten something important, and that is to finish edit mode. Otherwise I won't be able to rotate the rail. There we go, that's much better. Okay, so to rotate, the object's already selected. We click on the rotate tool, and okay, just going to take it to 90 degrees. There we go. So that's still not the correct rotation for the reference level, so we need to rotate it one more time. And I'll just take it from there, and there we go. Now I'm going to move it because I want it to sit next to that wall. That's looking pretty good. We just need to extend it down to this wall here. So grab the handle on the bottom of the rail and just move the mouse down while you're holding the left mouse key to get to that wall. So if we look at it in front view now, it should be correct, except we actually want it to be up here. So it's already selected, and we can just simply click on it and move the mouse up, and we might need to move it back to the center again. So now we've got it up there. We actually want to dimension the distance from the floor to the underside of the rail, and we can get our rail height. So I've clicked on the align dimension tool, select the floor, and the rail. Take that dimension out. Now, I haven't actually created any parameters for the rail yet, so I'll add a parameter, and the parameter I want to add is hanging rail height from floor, and I want that to be 2,200 millimeters, and I'll lock that. click on the dimension, click on label, drop down, and hanging rail height from the floor. There we go. Okay, so I'm happy with the height. We now have a circular rail. You've had a bit of a go at using the circle tool and the rotate tool. So we're going to create the ceiling, and it just sits on the outer walls. It's that L shape again, and it just follows the line of the outer walls through there and is filled in through here. I'm just going to quickly do this because we've gone through the workflow so many times now. It should be really familiar. So reference level, now with the ceiling, I'm just going to join it to the walls. So you can use the join tool here to do that. So click on the ceiling, join, there's the walls and ceiling. And you can see now that it's all one piece. Just makes it look much neater. You won't see any joins then on the side. So that is our completed wardrobe. What it's missing now is the final finish materials. So that's what I'll take you through next. To apply materials to a piece of furniture, there are two main processes that you need to do. The first is to create parameters for each material that you want to assign, and then to link those parameters to a particular material. So if you had a parameter for wall material, and then you might want to link it to timber, for example. And the second thing is, second process is that you then need to apply those parameters to the different areas of the furniture. So it's very much like what we've already done with applying length, width and height dimension. And this is all done through family types again. So click on the family types editor and click on the add button, and we'll just type in a name. So now this time under type of parameter, we don't want it to be length, we want it to be material. And then that under group parameters under, it automatically changes to materials and finishes. Then click OK, and you can see now that it is listed in a different section to the length, width, height, depth, dimensions. we'll add another material. I'm actually going to create extra materials, extra parameters, sorry, because even though I'm quite happy to have the entire wardrobe as timber, later on I might put it into a different project and I might want the shelves to be white laminate or something different. So this will give me the option of changing a section of the wardrobe later if I want to. So we continue to make sure that you change the type of parameter to material, and I'll add some more. So I've just added a few extra material for shelves and material for kickboard. Now what you need to do is in this value column where it says by category, you need to actually assign a material to each of these parameters. So to do that, we click where by category is and then click on this little grey button that appears here. And this will take you into the material browser. Now this is if you've applied materials to a floor or a wall before in a model, in your plan that you're developing, this is a very similar process. So just select the default material, right click on it and click duplicate. And now we need to rename it. I'm going to put my name first so I know that it's mine. When I do a search, then I can just search for all the Belinda materials. Timber. I want to make it quite descriptive so that I know that that's the material for my wardrobe. So under appearance, here it says, so that I clicked on that appearance tab, here it says under generic, no image selected in brackets. Now that's actually a hyperlink, so you can click on that and it says, when I hover over it, it says no texture is assigned to the material. So, and you'll see now that you get a whole range of materials that you can select. So I'm going to use Beechwood Amaretto and click open. And it's non-metallic, that's fantastic. Identity, you can put in so you can type in some values here if you want to. You don't have to. And I'm pretty happy with that. So the name is and it's and okay. So we'll click OK for that. And so now my shelves will be that timber. I also want my kickboard to be that timber. So I'll just select that and click OK. This OK. I want my drawers to be that timber. But of course you could make another material if you wanted to. And I want my carcass to be that timber. But as I said before, the reason I've created so many is that you could have your carcass as a different material if you wanted to the drawers. Now the rail and the drawer handles I want to be metal, so I'm going to make a new material. So I've clicked in the by category cell and just click on the grey button there. And again we go to default, right click and duplicate. Now I'm going to change that to okay, so it's actually linked because I accidentally timber onto the default, which is fine. It's not hard to change that. So it's already linked to timber, but we'll change that to something else. So click on that link, and I want a metal. So maybe this is all alphabetical. So we'll just scroll down to M. Here we go, metals. I don't really want anything fancy. I just want a basic metal. Stainless will be good. Okay. So this time I'm changing it to I'll just call it stainless steel 4. And then from my description, change that to materials, stainless steel, metal. Now, here it says non-metallic. We actually want it to be metallic this time. So we click OK. And now I just want my drawer handles to have that, to be linked to that material. So I click on that little button and metal, OK, and that's it. I've created parameters and linked them to a material. To apply the material, what you need to do once you've got out of the family types editor is to select a piece of your furniture. So there's the ceiling. Just by clicking on it, click on the properties tab if you can't already see it, and see here where it says materials and finishes by category. We want to change that. So there's this tiny button over here. Click on that, and this comes up. So I can select from this list what I want. So material for carcass, that will be, and OK. And I'll do the same for the walls. So that's already applied. And the shelves, I want materials and finishes by category. I want for shelves. And again, I can change this later. So to select more than one shelf, you could hold down the control key and here, and material for shelves. So our floor also needs to have the carcass material applied to it. Material for carcass. And the kickboard here. Material for kickboard. So hold down the control key and select both the drawers. Material for drawers. And so now we've applied the timber to the whole of the wardrobe. We can now apply metal to the rails and the drawer handle. I'm holding down the control key and selecting both of my drawer handles. And materials and finishes in properties, little button, material for drawer handles, and the same for the rail. Material for rail. Okay. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. We've now applied materials to the wardrobe, and when you load it into your project, you'll be able to see all those materials. Finally, if you haven't saved your piece of custom furniture, you'll need to do that. So we go up to the Revit icon, save as, and we want to select family. I've actually already saved mine as a wardrobe system. I've created a folder called custom furniture and I've put it in there. So basically assign a file name and put it where you want to have it located on your computer and click save. I'm not going to do that because I've already saved it, so I'm just going to do an update save there. And now your piece of furniture is ready to load into your plans. So I've got my plans open here, and I'm going to put that wardrobe here. So as you will with any other piece of furniture, you go to Component and Load Family, and then you just select wherever you've got your furniture. So I'll put mine in Documents, and here it is, Wardrobe System. Click Open, and there's my wardrobe. Now I can press the space bar to rotate it around to the correct position, and then just slot it in. As simple as that. Press Escape, and now if I want to see what it looks like, we can go to the 3D view, and it might be a bit tricky because I've got so many walls in this plan, but you can see, there it is, and you can see that it's got the timber finish and the metal drawer handles. That's it.